The thumbnail is my not very good Metroid pose. This is the vlog for December 17th, 2018. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. Big for people who don't have to work, like me, yet. The Mesa Prime access in Warframe will be... You know, I just said it was a big day for people that don't have to work. It's only a big day for people to play Warframe that don't have to work. But I do find myself playing a lot of it lately. Mesa Prime looks fantastic, and the developers did something really interesting today. A Prime Access is a special event where you can pay money to get some of the new items that are being released and a large sum of the currency platinum that is used to buy numerous things in game. All of the Prime Accesses, and I've only been around for Mesa Prime will be my fourth, but I have noticed that they all do something similar. There's a basic version where you pay usually around $40 to $60. It's probably $60, and you get the weapons that are released with the Warframe and a reasonably large amount of platinum. You can spend something like $80 to $90 and get both of the weapons and the Warframe itself and a much larger pile of platinum. And then you can get a super deluxe package that's over $100, which I've done once. And that will get you both weapons, the Warframe, and a host of other accessories, and 2 boosters that increase the amount of money that you make and the rate at which you build affinity with your equipment, which are very useful and sort of hard to live without once they run out. The ones that you get with Prime Access last for 90 days. The ones that you can buy in game with Platinum last for 30. So, one thing that they also do is that they will also sell the accessory pack. So none of the weapons and none of the Warframe, but the boosters and any special cosmetic things will be available for about $50. This is where it gets sort of complicated. So what the cosmetics are vary from Prime Access to Prime Access. For Zephyr Prime, which was up when I first started playing back in March, it was an outfit for the operator, which is a special feature that you don't unlock until late in the story, and some armor that goes on your pets, if I remember correctly. Limbo Prime Access was I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't very interesting to me, and I decided that I didn't want to pick it up, so I didn't bother. Chroma Prime Access was a set of armor, the Imagi armor, and a Cyandana, which is basically a cape. This particular cape mounts over the left shoulder, and hangs off to one side instead of straight down the back, and is thin and short, and basically just gives it sort of an austere, regal look, which works well given that most of the Prime Warframes are covered in gold. I picked up that whole package, and that was when I still had a job, and so I didn't feel too bad about dropping $120 on a game that I had been having a lot of fun playing. So when Mesa Prime Access was announced, they showed off the accessory pack. And this time, it was a bunch of facial accessories for the operator. A little mask, a monocle, and like a headband and some weird earpieces. Oh, and a Sugatra, which are little dangly things that you hang on the back of a melee weapon, or on the handle of a melee weapon. These were not terribly well received by the community. And I just figured, well, I mean, it's one aspect of the game that they haven't put too much effort in, but they're going to start making an effort, so I can see why they would do that. I think part of the problem is that the character model they have wearing the stuff just looks kind of goofy. He has a hairstyle that you could really love or hate. not terribly neutral. They should have gone with one of their shaved head guys just so people have an easier time imagining their character with the stuff on. So, imagine my surprise today when they announced they were adding a new item. It's a helmet for Mesa Prime. And this is the first time that a Warframe that's been primed has had a specific helmet that's meant to go with the Prime version. So that's a pretty big deal. I don't know if it's a deal I'm willing to spend $50 on right now. The Prime Access is going to last for the next 2 or 3 months at least. So I've got time. If I decide I want to pick that stuff up, I can just do that. Hopefully within the next 3 months I'll have either a book deal or a job. So there's no rush on that, although I may decide to splurge and spend a little bit of my savings on this just to have something to do. We'll see. But funny, on the heels of this revelation today that they were going to add something, I watched a video about the Metroid series and about how Nintendo itself struggled to sort of figure out what it wanted to do with Metroid. Because while these games are critically acclaimed, they are not financial successes, not nearly at the same level that Mario or even Zelda, which is not quite as robust as Mario, tend to be. Breath of the Wild is an amazing game, and it's well worth owning a Switch for, and I would tell anybody that's on the fence, play this game. It is an experience that you'll never have in your life. However, it's not nearly as easy to get into as Mario Odyssey. I have ambivalent feelings about Mario Odyssey because I tested it. I was actually a tester on that game. I was the text lead on that game, and so it was my job to make sure that the text was handled correctly after the initial text lead was pulled off that project to work on something else. So if you ever find any spelling mistakes, it's at least partly my fault. There is a lot of text in that game, surprisingly, and so finding it all was sort of a chore, and there were times when I was writing up bugs, and then the design of the game changed slightly, and then the things that I wrote up, the solutions to the bugs I wrote became bugs, and that's sort of how the process goes. But Metroid had a very clear identity right up until 2004. That's when Metroid Prime came out, and a lot of people were very confused by it because it was a 3D game that didn't have the sort of fast-paced action most of the time that Metroid games had sort of become famous for. There was no speed booster item to let you go zipping through the environment because it was loading off of a disk and it wouldn't be able to load fast enough to keep all the environment you'd be flying through within memory. So it had to look at what made Metroid feel like Metroid, and to Retro's credit, they did a good job. And in this video, they make specific mention of 3 things that they feel are very important to a Metroid game. One is a feeling of exploration, where you don't know exactly what you're supposed to do next, but you are given clues throughout the environment, which we'll talk about later, that sort of indicate what you're supposed to do. So maybe you find a cracked wall, you realize that you can break that wall, but nothing in your arsenal has enough power to. Eventually, you find a bomb item, and you go, aha, this is an explosive. It'll probably break through those cracks. Sure enough. Later, you might find a door that's been covered in ice. Oh, I need a heat weapon, and eventually you do. The game gives you power-ups. This is the second point. The game gives you power-ups that increase your ability to progress. When you start the game, you feel very weak. You feel like you can't do as much, and you don't know what to do. But slowly but surely, you get enough power that by the end of the game, the earlier areas are just being destroyed as you pass casually. And the third thing that's really important to this person, and I sort of agree, is a feeling of, it's hard to describe, environments that have unique landmarks that feel like different rooms are different rooms, and you can sort of tell where you are just by looking instead of checking your map to figure out where you are in an area. Each room should have its own identity, even if the room doesn't do anything other than instruct you where to go next through a little subtle clue. These are the things that make a Metroid game. And the fact that Other M really lacks all 3 of those things, it's not a game about exploration because you're always told with a map marker where you need to go next. The power-up progression is actually not progression. You're just getting new items when there's call for it. Sometimes you're not even getting the items when you need them. You're getting the items after someone tells you need them through a cutscene displaying how you need them, which let the player figure that out. If they run into an enemy that they can't damage because their current weaponry doesn't work, let them try not to damage it. Don't halt the game and tell them, you can't damage that enemy with your current weapons. Go back another room. And thirdly, because it takes place in the space station, and most of the rooms in the space station look like rooms in a space station with a few biome rooms that have vegetation or sand or ice or lava, you get a real hard time trying to figure out where you need to go next because the areas all look so similar. The very first game had this problem. They were reusing not just the individual sprites, but they were using the very designs of rooms in multiple places. That's confusing. So, part of what makes being a game developer difficult is you have to figure out what people want, and you have to be willing to give it to them. And sometimes you have to give it to them in ways where they don't necessarily know it's what they want, and you only subtly give it to them. But the guys that can do that in game design, the guys that don't just listen to what their fan base is saying, but anticipate what a player is going to think when they're playing the game and act accordingly, those are the masters. I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.